Welcome back, everybody, to the Classic Rock Podcast. And coming up in this show, it's part one of a two-part conversation with two guests this month. Firstly, one of the great drummers that Britain has produced over the last 60 years. And when you think of the list, to get on that list, you've got to be good. Ginger Baker, Mick Avery, John Bonham, Bill Bruford, Phil Collins, Mick Fleetwood, Nick Mason, Mitch Mitchell, Keith Moon, Ian Pace, Carl Palmer. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And you can add to that list our guest here, because he sits perfectly in that company. His name is John Coughlan. He began his time with Alan Lancaster and Francis Rossi in the Spectres 60 years ago, when they were literally still teenagers and not fully left school. They went on, of course, to become one of the most commercially successful British bands, not just rock bands, but British bands of all time. Status Quo. And John Coughlan, a true gentleman of rock and roll. And he's going to be talking with me a little later on about how it all began, that very first meeting with Lancaster and Rossi, and right the way through the 60s as the Spectres, of course, and then when they very nearly became Traffic, until Steve Winwood piped up and said, here, I picked that first. And then they were thinking about becoming Traffic Jam before they became the Status Quo, and then they just became Status Quo. And there is more. As I said, we're going to be talking to two guests in this edition. And next is a man whose guitar playing has been admired over the years by a stream of rock stars and mega bands, including Metallica. His name is Jack Starr, and Jack Starr's Burning Starr have a new album out. It's called Souls of the Innocent, and we're going to be talking to Jack later about his arrival in the USA. He was born in France and arrived at a great time in the early 60s, and we'll talk about his career, the bands he first saw and who influenced them. Black Sabbath, incidentally, the first band that he saw. So the early days, your father was stationed over in Europe in the war, but he stayed on after working for the US. He met your mother, who amazingly is still here today, aged 105, I believe. And you were actually born then in France before the move to the US.
My father went over there for World War II. He stayed there in France another 15 years after the war, working for the US government. So I was born in France, and I didn't get to America till the 61 or 62. I think I was like 9 years old. And when I came to America, I didn't speak a word of English. So I had to learn English. And
what was that like, having to do that back then in the 60s?
It was difficult because just learning it, English is a difficult language. Luckily, for me, I was young, and they say it's easier when you're young to learn a language. And I watched a lot of American television, and I really liked the culture. It was like kind of a fish to water. I liked the whole American culture, and it was so radically different than my youth in Paris.
What would be your friends like? Because I mean, I know what kids are like, notoriously are difficult when they get something new in. So were you accepted into into your schools and with your local friends and everything? Did you get on all right, or was it just a really difficult period?
Actually, it was more difficult for my older brother, because he really had a hard time getting rid of the French accent. So he was targeted for, funny jokes that weren't funny, and, things like that. Within, I don't know, really 6 to 8 months, I was speaking English fluently with very, very little accent.
It's
So,
incredible.
so yeah, so it wasn't, I wasn't a target, because, I, there was nothing about me that was really that weird.
Did you have a love of music before you landed in the US, or was it
Yeah.
when you landed in the US and there's, the birth of rock and roll is going on and there's Elvis and the Beatles are starting to appear?
Yeah. What happened is, I did listen to a lot of music in France. France is a weird country. I mean, they play a lot of classical music on the radio, which is nice. And so I grew up with a lot of that. And then they have this music they call French variety music, which is like Johnny Holiday and Sylvie Vartan and Francois Hardy, people like that in the 60s. And then when I got to America, none of those people were popular in America, which, it was difficult for me to understand that it was a totally different culture with different icons and different idols and different music. And so I listened to what was going on in America, and there was a lot of Motown that was starting up. And I liked that, with the Supremes and the Temptations and all that. And then the Beatles came out, I think around 64, 65. And I don't know, I was like 10 years old or whatever I was. And I like that, not so much the Beatles, but the British invasion. So it was really a time of musical, discovery for me.
So when did you pick up your first instrument and what were you trying to play? I mean, I know you had a love of R&B.
Yeah, I tried to play drums. And then I realized really I had no aptitude for it at all. I think I didn't have a really great sense of rhythm maybe back then, or maybe I just didn't like lugging around a big drum set, you know. So that got that got kind of forgotten really quickly, the drums. Then I realized the guitar is what I really wanted to do, and I got off to a really slow start on the guitar, but as time went on, I realized that there were other, like kindred spirits in my school that had long hair. I mean, that was a big deal back then. Very few people were really trying to have that look. That
Yeah,
that
yeah.
rock musician look, and there was like maybe 5 kids in my whole school that had long hair and that wanted to dress, like the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or whoever. I was one of those 5 kids. So when we saw another one in the hallway, it was like we'd give each other the approving nod, like, "Oh, okay, you're one of us." And then we got sent to the principal's office, which for basically having long hair and looking weird. And then our parents got called in, and it was like, there's something wrong with Jack. Why is he dressing like that? And why isn't he getting a haircut? And my mother tried to defend me by saying, no, that's a French haircut. That's how they wear their hair in France, which was kind of partially true because, we did, wear our hair longer in France. But regardless, it was this whole, I wanted to identify with the bands that were coming over from England at the time.
Who was the first band that you saw
Oh,
live?
that I saw live. Well, actually, it came later. It came in like 1970. It was really Black Sabbath. I saw them at a little club. When I say little, it really wasn't that little. The name of the place was the Action House, and it held about 1,200 people. So, even by today's standards, it would be a good sized club. And they were really the first band that I really saw, where I went and they were the only band playing, and it was really quite an experience. And it was like a very formulative experience for me.
And were they the ones that gave you the idea that, hey, this is where I want to go, and this is the type of music that I want to play?
Yeah, I think in a way they were, because I was being confronted with it, live, and I could see how it was done. It wasn't watching, the Ed Sullivan Show, which was a big television show in America. It wasn't seeing your idols on a small television screen. It was seeing a blood and guts and sweat band a few feet away from you, and with everything that it entailed. So yeah, it was pretty exciting, and the whole drama of a band live in front of you. I really liked it, and I liked seeing how the audience was interacting.
So if we move on, here we are, 38 years on from the first album, 85's Rock the American Way. Souls of the Innocent, which has been described, and I've looked at a good few reviews, as a great new metal masterpiece. And listening to it, I mean, it's easy to concur with that. So how happy are you with the end product and the reception in the first weeks that it's been out?
It's been really a tremendous reception. I have to say, I mean, so far it's gotten really the best reception, short of this one album that I did in 1984 with Rhett Forrester. It was my first solo album, which was called Out of the Darkness. I would say next to that, this is the one that's getting the most accolades, or the most positive reviews.
Why do you think that is? Because I mean, the formula has never really strayed much. I mean, it's a great album. Is it to do with maybe you're with a new record company now, so more promotion? The name is out there more.
Yeah, I think that's a great deal of it. What you just mentioned, Global Rock is really doing a great job with the promotion and the launch of this record. And also they hired a full-time publicist, which is really important, because, it's like that old saying, if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear or see it fall, did it really fall, and does it even really matter? So they stepped up to the plate, and they did the things that are necessary for people to hear it. The other thing, so that's really important. The other thing is, I don't want this to sound like pretentious, but there's a saying that my father told me a long time ago. He said, just because you make something look easy doesn't mean that it is easy. And what I mean by that is, this album does stick, to this well-trod path, that other metal bands have trod before us, like Sabbath, Priest, Maiden. But it's not easy. It just, in other words, it's not easy to capture that stark, primitive, transparent sound with a heavy dose of melody and thundering drums and great singing and all the other elements. In other words, okay, maybe we didn't reinvent the wheel, but it's also not easy to even make a good facsimile of the wheel.
Good line. So you wrote and recorded this during the pandemic.
Yes.
You, Ned, and Kenny live reasonably close to each other, so you could at
Mhm.
least get together, albeit socially distanced. But Alex is Italy based, so how
Yeah.
easy was it to accommodate that distance?
Well, that was the the thing that we had to overcome. The bass player in our band, Ned Maloney, he's a great bass player. He's played with a lot of great people in the past, but he was a stickler for having Alex pronounce English correctly, or as close to we could get for a non-English speaker. So they did a lot of Skype calls together where Ned would go over the pronunciation with Alex, and which is something we would have done live if Alex had lived, in Florida or even in the United States. We would have flown him, to us, and we would have had him, live. But luckily, the technology does exist, where you can have these Skype calls and Zoom calls and Facebook Messenger and all that. And so we were able to overcome that and really work on that. And Ned got the performance out of him that we needed, because even though I would, tell Ned, I said, it's not really that bad if he has a little bit of an accent. I mean, look at Klaus Meine of the Scorpions. Look at the singer from Loudness. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
uh,
Ronnie Romero is another one.
yeah, exactly.
But I've got to
So
say, actually, listening to the album, he did an unbelievable job on his accent, because
yeah,
you cannot tell at all, I don't think, unless you're listening to it looking for individual words, that he
right,
isn't having English as his first language.
exactly. I agree with you, and there was definitely an emphasis on trying to make it less, and so I guess Ned succeeded.
So tell me,
or
where did you first hear Alex? I mean, you've got a bit of history of uncovering a good vocalist here and there. For somebody who's so young as well, let's say, because he's been with you a couple of years and he's still only 31. So where did you first come across him?
what happened is our previous manager knew that we were looking for a singer, because our singer, Todd Michael Hall, left the band to join an American metal band called Riot. So he joined Riot, and we really had some big shoes to fill. I mean, Todd is a phenomenal singer, and he later went on, he became a contestant on an American television show, The Voice, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. They get like literally, 10,000 applicants to be on this show. So I'm saying that just to really establish that Todd Michael Hall, it was a force of nature vocally, just a really great, great singer. And so anyway, we were, our previous manager knew we were looking for a singer, and he submitted a lot of names to us and a lot of people, that would be open, to being in our band. Obviously, like Bruce Dickinson wouldn't be one of them. He's got his own band. Rob Halford wouldn't have been a good one, and or Jeff Tate. They're busy. So we had to have realistic expectations as well, and as to you know, are they going to want to be in a band that is not an arena band? That is not a band that and are they going to want to put in the time and the effort to record this album that we had already started on, 2 years earlier? I mean, we've been working on this album really for about, I don't know, well, about over 4 years. So to make a long story short, when we heard, his name got submitted to us, and when we heard his voice, my initial reaction wasn't even really that favorable. Uh, I thought, yeah, he's got a great voice, but he's got too much of a Def Leppard kind of commercial sound. I was looking more to hear like Ronnie Dio. It was kind of like very passionate, dark, gritty. Um, but Ned said, you're not understanding, Jack. You're an idiot. Listen to him again. So I said, what do you mean I'm an idiot? He goes, just listen to him. Don't you hear the potential? And I did. I re-listened to him, and then I pretty much listened to everything he ever did. I was still thinking, he still has that Def Leppard thing going on. uh, I didn't really hear it, but Ned said, why don't we do this? Why don't we just send him a track? Let's send him the title track, because all these songs were recorded. They just needed some killer vocals. I said, why don't you send him the track and kind of, you tell him what you want, Ned, and see if he has an affinity for that kind of music. Maybe there's another side to this guy. That was my concession to Ned. Like, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe there's another side.
I was going to say there's lots different on this album. We have a cello. This is all, I believe, Ned's doing, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot of it really actually emanated from Ned. He was kind of hoping to drag us kicking and screaming into another phase of the band. And I was actually okay with it, because sometimes you have to reinvent yourself a little bit. So to complete the story, so anyway, we sent him the title track, we sent him the music minus vocals, and we all really got on the internet with him and told him what we were looking for. And 2 weeks later, the tape came, and it was just amazing. And I was just basically, I kind of had egg on my face, as they say. It was like, wait a minute, he can do more than be a commercial singer. He can really sing his butt off. And then I found out later that he actually was influenced by a singer that I had worked with, a guy named Rhett Forrester, who had this gritty, almost Southern rock kind of voice. And Alex said, yeah, I really like that style too. So all the pieces really started to make sense. And by the way, the track that we used on Souls of the Innocent is actually the demo that he sent back. So his vocals, we thought they were so good, we actually didn't redo them.
I tell you, I do love the story here about you guys doing the rehearsal in your garage and your neighbor coming across the street. Not saying, listen, guys, can you turn it up a bit, because me and the wife are getting off on it.
Yeah, and that is a true story. It's just so weird when things like that happen, because you're always, when you're having loud rehearsals in a garage, you're always worried they're going to call the police for noise, which they can. And it's happened to me like in the past, a long time ago. And you're playing and you don't even hear the police knocking on the door because you're playing so loud. Finally, when the song ends, you hear this enormous knocking, But this time, it was the neighbors, and they were really enjoying the metal. And I guess it also shows, too, that the aging of people that are into metal and rock, it's not just like, they've become the homeowners, and they've become the police, and they've become, the people in authority. And a lot of them still really like, heavy metal music. So that's a nice thing.
You can still hear a lot of the influences in this classic sound you've crafted. Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, Metallica, bit of Sabbath, Queensryche in there. Not a surprise that some of these guys, Metallica in particular, Queensryche, have been fans of yours since the very early days.
Well, it's funny because even though, we get compared to those bands, the truth be told is that I'm really more from the era of the guys that some of the younger bands listen to. I mean, I'm in the age group with Iron Maiden. I'm in the age group with Priest, with Kiss. So I listened to the same stuff that they listened to when they were coming up. In other words, I wasn't listening to Priest to learn how to play guitar, or Maiden, or even Deep Purple for that matter. I mean, I was listening to the people they listened to, which would be like, Freddie King, Albert King, all that kind of music, Dick Dale, things like that. And so that's kind of cool. And then Ned, who's younger than me, not by that much, but he's younger than me. So he's kind of in between. He listened to those people, and he also listened to their influences. And same thing with Rhino. Now, Alex, that's a whole different ball of wax, because he really listened to the metal that to him was classic, metal. And I'm really fortunate that one of my albums fell into that category. So when we took Alex in the band, we later found out that he had actually gone to Germany and seen us play at a festival, and was online to get merchandise and autographs from our band. And there's actually a picture of it. So it was really crazy, that he basically, after we got him in the band, he said, by the way, I'm a fan of Burning Starr. I went to Germany to see you guys play, and I went online and I got your autographs. I was like, oh my God, this is like unbelievable. That, but it makes sense, because in Europe, the demographics of metal are a lot younger than in America.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, listen, we've mentioned the record label, the new label, which appears to have a big interest in your music, and they're not just filling a roster here. So maybe with this album, it's going to elevate you out of this category of, quote, one of the great unsung heroes of heavy metal.
Yeah.
Be more recognized, because the album deserves it. I mean, does that irritate you to continually have that tag as being an unsung hero? Would you like to be a hero?
Yes, thank you. I would. I'm not going to lie. It would be nice to get a little bit out of the whole anonymity thing, but I have to say, there's also something really cool about being having a cult of people that follow you and like what you're doing. There's a closeness and a camaraderie. The only thing that there really isn't like money. Yeah. If you're ever hoping to make a living doing this crazy stuff, you really need to get more people involved into that cult. The cult's got to get bigger, and it's happening now. I mean, I see it happening, and it's like, it's really incredible, actually, because this album, I mean, it's really all over the internet. It's really it's gaining traction, as they say in America.
The dragon on the album cover. Now, you're exploring the possibility of bringing him to life, giving him a personality and a name. I understand he's going to be called Blaze. But there are plans afoot for Blaze.
Yeah, we have some artists working on it, and this was my idea. You don't really see the dragon; you just see the face, the head of it. And I'm thinking it would be great if we could get a really great artist to to finalize him. You know, put some legs on him, put a tail on him, maybe have him wear a heavy metal belt, which makes no sense, but it might be cool. You know, something like what Saxon was wearing, like, you know, what Biff was wearing like 40 years ago. You know, something like that. Um, I don't know. It's just the idea dawned on me because I really think that heavy metal shouldn't take itself so seriously. Yes, the music should be serious, but there also should be a little bit of a humoristic, you know, side to it. And I like that concept of humor, you know, and you know, like Eddie, perfect example, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. One last question then. You must be itching to get out of the house and the garage and get on stage and start playing. But I see that you're planning more about 2023 and the festival circuit there. Any chance of anything live beforehand?
Yes, well, I've heard, you know, I've heard from different people tell me that they are working on getting us out there, and there's already been some interest from some festival promoters in Spain, which is turning into a real metal country lately, which I like, and also in Scandinavia. So I think that that's going to happen, and you know that's what we want to do because really that's the time when a band really shines the most. I think, you know, if you can deliver the goods on stage and you've got good players in your band, by all means, you need to get out there and play.